Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be going over how to set up a basic Sequelize and SQLite3 database setup. But first, we're going to have to make a utility folder, or utils. I call it utils because it's got all the different components that I use a lot. So say I make a pagination, if you know what that is, then I put it in there so I can access it elsewhere in my code, and it's like out of the way. It's saying this is stuff that I might use a lot, like if I have an error handler, I'll put it in my utility folder, that sort of thing. But today we're going to be making a database.js file. The reason why I'm putting it in a utils folder and not just out in the open is because we're only really going to need to run this once, unless you want to change something. So we're going to have to, well, I guess first we're going to have to install it. So npm I, lowercase s for Sequelize. Make sure you spell it right, and you can also put SQLite3 there at the same time. You can do them both at the same time, one after the other, because there's a space, and so it knows they're different things and to install them separately. So I've already installed it, but I'm going to install it again, and then I'm just going to clear my console because I don't need to see that in my peripheral vision. Now we're going to, as I said, make a utility folder. We just did that, and this is how we're going to make a basic configuration file for the database using Sequelize. So we're going to obviously have to require Sequelize. Make sure you pay attention throughout this video. There's going to be uppercase S for Sequelize and lowercase s. When it's an uppercase S in this case, it's going to be when you require Sequelize from the module we just installed. And when it's a lowercase, it's referencing this file. So we're going to do const Sequelize equals new Sequelize. And there's a few different parameters we have to put in. So I'm going to call the database. This is what it's going to be called when it makes a new file. And I'm just going to set the user to be user and the password to be password because it's all local. It shouldn't matter. And we have to specify the dialect, which is essentially what we're using. And in this case, it's SQLite. As I showed you guys earlier, we're installing SQLite. And the host is going to be localhost, which just means you're running it on your computer. That's why I like using Sequelize so much in SQLite3, is because it works on my computer and I can control everything. Actually, sorry, this is where we're setting the database.SQLite. Make sure it's .SQLite, but you can name this whatever you'd like for the file. And the reason why I'm setting logging to false is otherwise it'll tell me every time it does something, and I don't necessarily want to see everything that it does constantly. Why did it do that? Anyway, now we're exporting this, which if you highlight any piece of text when you're programming, it'll highlight all the other chunks. So it's, remember, lowercase Sequelize is what we just made. This is basically saying this is the database, and when it's uppercase, that's for requiring this is what Sequelize is. So that's the program, and then this is the actual database. So this is what we use to make the database, and this is the database. So we're exporting the database like this. Now the next step is going to be creating the models folder. And this is where we store all the different files for how the actual entries in the database are structured. Because when you make a new database, when you make a new model in a database, you have to when you make a new entry into a database, you have to have a defined table. In this case, it's all structured. There is non-structured databases where you can just add data to it, but it's a lot more organized to make it so you can classify it into, okay, this is a guild or a server, this is a member or user, this is information about the welcome channel, this is information about the welcome role. You can have all that different stuff, and it's structured, so it's always going to be in the same format. Think of it like a table. And so we're going to make a file called guild.js in this example, because we need to have something in order to be able to go through all the different setup steps. So I'm going to start with making a basic guild setup. And what the guild is going to be storing is mainly going to be storing three things. The ID of the guild. Then we're also going to store the welcome channel ID and the welcome role ID. If you remember in the past episodes, we made a welcome system that looked for the in the welcome event, sorry, guild member add, it looked for a channel and a role with the name, well, the role member and then the channel name welcome. This way we're actually going to be able to store an ID and then fetch the specific role per server, so it's a lot more multi-server friendly. And also on another note, for making your bot multi-server friendly, in the deploy commands, instead of doing .put, where is it? So I think this, if it's application guild command, yeah. So if you specify this as application guild commands, so if it looks more like this, application guild commands, you're putting in a specific guild. That's how you specify to put the commands into a specific guild, a specific server. Now, if you just do it this way, where it's just application commands, then it's going to do it in all servers at the same time. I don't remember if I mentioned this a lot in my past episodes, but since we're on the topic of a database, which is often used to store data for multiple servers, I figured I'd go over this again. Very important. Just change this to guild in here, application guild commands, and then along with the client ID, you just got to put the guild ID in here. All right. That's the only difference, really. Anyway, now we're going to have to make the guild.js model, which defines what the guild will look like within our database. So again, we're importing Sequelize. This is the Sequelize like library, that sort of thing, where we installed Sequelize. Now we're going to require the Sequelize that we made elsewhere in the database. So we're actually doing // in this case, because we're getting out of the models folder, because if you see right here, we're in the models folder. So // goes back one directory. Now we're in the main directory. Now we can select models, do /, and then, or sorry, not models. And then we're going into utils / database, and that's that. Now we're going to define guild. So we're going to say capital G guild equals Sequelize. Again, the instance that we already made. This is only going to be used for data types right now. .define. Whoa, that's not what I wanted. And we're going to name it guild. That's how it's going to look in the database. And we're going to break it off into a JSON object like that. Now we're going to set the ID. And all these have to be objects. So the type of the object, or the type of the ID, is going to be capital S Sequelize. So now we're getting the data types, and we're going to say string. Make sure it's all caps. We're going to allow null to be false. Well, actually, we don't have to do that because we're going to set this as a primary key. A primary key means it has to be unique. And it has to be an actual value. Like, it cannot be null. It can't be nothing, in other words. So that's that. Comma, welcome, channel, ID. We're going to set the type to be Sequelize, capital S again, .string. And we're going to allow null, false. What this is saying is it's required, essentially. If you remember / commands, you say it's required. Now we're saying it can't be null. Now we're setting a welcome role ID. We're going to set the type to be Sequelize, capital S again, .string. Now you may be asking, if you've figured this out already, the IDs of servers, channels, roles, they're all really big numbers, but they're numbers, they're not strings. In other words, they're not text. So why are we setting it as a string? The reason why is it's a lot easier than making it a big integer, in other words. So storing it as a big number, it's just easier to store it as a string. It still works with Discord, the Discord API, so that's just what we're going to do for now. And again, we're going to set it to be allow null. Sorry, these need to be true, because we do want it to be allowed to be null. We do want it to be allowed to be nothing. And essentially what we're saying is a server doesn't have to have a welcome role. A server doesn't have to have a welcome channel. So this is fine to leave it like that, and don't forget to export it. We could also export out here. We could just say module.export equal guild or equals sequelize.define guild, but I like to do it this way. It's personal preference. You can specify it however you'd like, because you really could just do this. Module.exports equals this. But this is how I like to do it. Do it as you like, as long as you understand what you're doing. Now we're going to be making a syncdb command or file. I call it a command because you run it every now and then if you need to sync up your database. What this is going to be doing is we could say const sequelize equals require, and then we can say /utils/database, and we could do sequelize.sync force true. It's important to let you guys know the difference between force and alter. Force means that it resets all the data in the model in that database, and it sets it to everything to be empty, deletes all the data, and it makes the new changes that you made. Essentially, the only reason why you would sync the DB is if you made changes to one of the models and you need to change you need to update the database, because it doesn't update the database automatically when you make changes to the model. So you have to run node syncdb.js. That's why it's outside of the utils folder, because we're going to be running it more often manually. So it's nice to just have it easier access, because then we can just run node syncdb.js. Let me just get rid of alter real quick, and I'll explain what that does after. And as soon as we run that, you should get a database.sqlite file to pop up. Currently it doesn't have any tables. If we specify guild models/guild, and this is how it really should be structured, and then you do guild.sync. Now we're going to notice if we refresh this, oh, of course, you guys don't have this yet. Sorry, almost forgot. Go into here, and you're going to want to look up SQLite, SQL, sorry, all caps, and then ITE space capital V viewer. And it should be the top one. It'll look like this. It'll have this example, and it's what I use and what I would recommend for viewing any SQLite files that you might have. So when we do alter, it'll only add new columns, I guess, because these are the different columns. So these are you got welcome roles, you got the created at and updated at. These are by default created, so it's whenever you create a new entry into the database, it saves when it was created at, when it was last updated at, because there's different methods of updating and creating different data files, I guess you could say. And when we use alter, it won't delete any columns that have data in them, but it will create new columns. So if you just made new columns that you want to add, so say you added a new feature to your Discord bot and you have a ticket channel that you need to store for each guild, then you would add a brand new column by just going into your model, adding the necessary information, going to your syncdb.js file, and set this to alter. It is best practice to keep it alter unless you absolutely have to force it, because as I said, forcing it basically deletes everything, starts over again, and that can be really annoying for the users of your bot. So it's better to just use alter. And honestly, if you're not sure, just comment out your code. So use 2 slashes, or you just click on the line, control slash, and just comment it out so you don't accidentally run the file, because sometimes you'll be pressing the up arrow in your console and you'll accidentally just do the wrong one. So I recommend, and I personally comment it out just to make sure that it's safe, unless I intentionally want to make modifications. But that's the basics for setting everything up. Now we actually have the database. We have the database.SQLite file. It has a guilds table in it. Oops. So, well, okay. I'm not sure when we're gonna do this, but I guess we'll make the changes next time, next video, to the welcome role and welcome channel, because this video is already reasonably long. But this is how you set up the basics. Yeah, next episode, which will hopefully be posted soon after this episode goes up, we'll talk about how to actually set this and interacting with the database so you can add new information, remove old information, all that good stuff, find information from the database and use it in your code. So look forward to that in the next episode. Hopefully this all works. Hopefully you have your database.SQLite file. Hopefully you have your table set up, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye for now. Website with code for all the videos is now in the description, so it's great. You can go on there, you can look at the code snippet / video section, and what that has is it has old videos and it has code snippets underneath, so it helps you compare your code. It doesn't have the code word for word as you go further into the series, but it definitely does have a good starting point, and you can compare the core concepts to make sure you have exactly the right wording, because sometimes case sensitive stuff is a real big pain in the butt. For starting out, I have this as an option, so make sure to check that out, like and subscribe for more, and see you all in the next episode. Bye for now.